Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a seemingly mundane labor task and transforming it into a fascinating, exact science. I mean, if you've ever stared at a freshly poured driveway or a perfectly set fence post and thought, how on earth does a bag of dusty gray powder turn into solid rock? Well, you're definitely in the right place. We are breaking down the exact science of how to mix concrete by hand. Let's get right into it.
Here is our recipe card for today. First, the ultimate concrete recipe. Second, hand mixing like a pro. Third, the golden rule of water. And finally, placing and finishing techniques.
So, what really makes the perfect batch of concrete? Is it just about, blindly dumping water into a bag of gray powder until it sort of looks right? Or is there a highly solvable mystery hidden in the chemistry of the mix? Well, as we're going to see, the quality of your final product depends entirely on how carefully you control the variables.
Section 1. The ultimate concrete recipe. Let's uncover the chemistry inside that wheelbarrow.
Concrete is basically a super precise recipe of two distinct components. First, you've got a paste, which is made of Portland cement and water. And this paste binds together the aggregates, which are things like sand, gravel, or crushed stone. When you actually break it down, the absolute volume of cement is usually only between 7 and 15%. Aggregates make up the vast majority, sitting right around 60 to 75%, and water makes up about 14 to 21%. There's even up to 8% trapped air in there. The real magic happens when the cement and water chemically react. It creates this paste that literally coats every single particle of aggregate and fills all the tiny spaces between them.
All right, Section 2. Hand mixing like a pro. Let's put on our gloves, grab that wheelbarrow, and step into the kitchen.
Okay, before we even start, we really need to talk about equipment. I know, you might be tempted to save some manual labor by grabbing a standard paddle mixer and chucking it into your power drill, but seriously, don't do it. Our sources explicitly warn against this. Concrete is just incredibly heavy and dense. If you try this with a regular household drill, you will more than likely burn the motor up completely. So unless you happen to have a highly specialized, heavy-duty mixing drill, we are going to go the manual route today with a traditional concrete hoe.
The absolutely crucial point here is following a strict process. Honestly, think of it exactly like making homemade pasta dough. First, cut an X right in the face of your 80-pound bag, then flip it over to empty it out cleanly. Next, you're going to form a little crater right in the center of that dry mix. Now pour about 3/4 of your pre-measured water directly into the crater. Grab your concrete hoe and slowly incorporate the liquid using long back and forth strokes. You want to mix this thoroughly for about 3 minutes, slowly adding in the rest of your measured water. And here is a step that so many people skip. Let the mix rest for 1 full minute. Seriously, this little pause allows the water to fully permeate the dry ingredients so those chemicals can properly react.
Oh, and here is just an incredible pro tip for your DIY project straight from the experts. After that 1-minute rest period, grab a rubber mallet and firmly tap the outside of your mixing pan or wheelbarrow. This action consolidates the mix and forces any excessively large trapped air bubbles to rise to the surface and escape. It's such a simple trick, but it massively improves the density of your final product.
So, how do you know when the texture is actually right? Well, you have to use your hands. Grab a handful, with your gloves on, of course. A proper mix should pack right into a ball in your hand, but it should easily crumble with just a light touch. If the concrete is too wet, it won't hold its shape when packed, and that's going to result in a much weaker slab. On the flip side, if it's too dry, it will pack into a ball, but when you touch it, it's going to abruptly break into chunks rather than lightly crumbling. Trust me, that dry mix will be an absolute nightmare to work with and finish.
Now this number right here is absolutely critical for your project timing. 1 hour. Once you add water and start mixing, the chemical clock starts ticking. You have a maximum of 1 hour to mix and place all of your materials. If you take any longer than that, the concrete starts to set. And if you pour fresh concrete against setting concrete, you create what are known as cold joints, which are severe weak points in your structure. To put that into perspective, with hand mixing taking about 5 minutes per 80-pound bag, you can realistically do a maximum of 12 rounds in that hour. That yields about 7 square feet of material, so definitely plan your pour accordingly.
Moving on to Section 3, the golden rule of water. Guys, this is the single variable that ruins most DIY concrete projects.
Here is the absolute golden rule of concrete. You can always add water, but you can't remove it. Adding too much water drastically dilutes the effect of the cement paste. I know what you're thinking. Yes, adding more water artificially increases the slump or workability of the concrete, making it flow a lot easier. But this comes at a terrible cost. It artificially increases the volume, reduces the density, and permanently lowers the strength of your finished slab. In fact, for outside concrete slabs, experts highly recommend maintaining a strict water-to-cementitious content ratio of 0.45 or less.
A lot of people get confused here because, they've seen those big ready-mix trucks pouring out wet, flowing concrete on large job sites. But listen to me, trust the bag. Bagged mixes are intentionally designed to be much, much drier than the concrete that comes out of a transit truck. So don't panic if your wheelbarrow mix looks a bit dry. If you measure the water exactly according to the instructions on the bag, it is going to yield a rich, highly workable mix once you actually get it placed and consolidated in your form. All right, our final section, Section 4. Placing and finishing techniques. Let's get our perfect mix out of the wheelbarrow and into the formwork. Placing the mix is actually surprisingly simple. Once you pour the mixture into the forms, you need to screed the surface. You do this by taking a straight, standard 2x4 piece of lumber that spans the entire width of your form. Then, you basically pull it towards you using a side-to-side, almost sawing or rocking motion. This specific motion does a few things. It pushes the heavy aggregates down, it eliminates any hidden voids within the slab, and it scrapes away all the excess products so your slab is perfectly level with your forms. Now, after screeding, it's a bit of a waiting game. You're watching the surface of the concrete for the wet sheen or bleed water to completely disappear. Only after that sheen entirely vanishes do you apply the final trowel coat. As you smooth it out with the trowel, you'll actually see the moisture subtly reappear right on the surface. Finally, right before it fully sets, take an ordinary broom, lay it gently on the surface of the slab, and just drag it across. This creates a really nice textured, non-skid finish that makes the concrete safe to walk on when it rains.
And there you have it. You've mastered the underlying chemistry of the paste and the aggregates. You know the exact physical hand mixing techniques to save your tools and consolidate your mix. And most importantly, you know to respect that strict water ratio to guarantee structural strength. So now that you know the exact science behind the mix, what are you going to build first? Grab your wheelbarrow, trust the process, and go pour something incredible. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer. I'll catch you next time.